All right. Welcome to our fifth episode today, fifth episode of OSS Power-Ups. Today with SpecFlow, and I'm already very excited to have Andreas here in a moment. But before we start, a couple of things. First thing, if you have any questions during our webinar, feel free to post them in the chat. We will try to address them either as we go, if they fit, or at the very end. And also, if you have to drop out at any point in time there, feel free to continue watching right afterwards, because the recording will be available immediately as we go here. And I have some very exciting news to share, and that is we still have some minor changes, but we do have a landing page now for our program. And as you see, if you just go there and browse, and I think I will share the link at some point later on Twitter, but we want to explain the program here a little more in detail. So as usual, we try to pick each new month, we try to pick a new project that gets this open OSS Power-Ups treatment. Andreas is today with us, and also you can see our previous guests like Jeremy with Fluent Validation, Dennis Duman with FluentAssertions, Bastian with Snoop, and last month we had Dylan and Kai with Silk.net. Also, you see here what we're actually doing, and particularly for those, if you're an open source maintainer, then here's just a little reminder that we definitely always give the open source licenses to all the open source projects that are out there. But regarding our OSS Power-Ups program, we have these three things that we want to give to the maintainers as a sign of our appreciation, which is the GitHub sponsorship, raising awareness, so having them in this webinar series, and also sharing our strengths, which includes creating graphical content, memory profiling, build pipelines, etc. One section we also have here is about creating plugins for ReSharper and Rider. That will always happen if the project gives enough space to do that. So it's not possible with every project, of course. But you can see we have here, for instance, Fluent Validation and FluentAssertions, which are already listed, where we created small plugins to fill some gaps or introduce some tiny neat features. I hope with Silk.net we actually also worked on a couple of things, and I hope we can list that too here. And also, if you're interested by yourself, creating something for your internal framework, let's say also, you can find out a bit more about how you can write plugins for ReSharper. One important aspect is also the more background section here. And I will skip this for today to elaborate longer on that. But I think this episode, our JetBrains Connect episode with Rachel and Aaron, is absolutely great. So I cannot be that eloquent as they were, explaining the issue at hand, which is, in short, that open source projects do not get enough support from the community, at least on the wider spectrum, let's say. And I really recommend watching that episode and learning a bit more about it. So, but for today, we want to power up everyone, and that's why I will bring in Andreas. Give me a second. There's Andreas. Hi, Andreas. How are you?
Hi, Matthias. Fine, thank you.
So today we're going to talk about SpecFlow, right?
Yes.
Maybe you explain briefly who you are, what is your relation to SpecFlow, and then we dive in a little more.
Good. At the moment, I'm the community manager of SpecFlow. Before that, I'm using SpecFlow since 2009, maintaining it since 2015. SpecFlow has its roots at my former employee, Tech Talk, where we started with it. And we had the luck that the company provided and sponsored us to work on it. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Always depends how much time is available. And since 1.5 years, we were acquired by Tricentis. Still the most parts of us is open source, and now, with the luck, we'll have a whole team working on it. And now I'm the community manager, making all this community content for our users to see how to use SpecFlow.
A bit more context. So I was very in love with test frameworks and stuff, and I always kept an eye on SpecFlow because it's really great to write your tests in a BDD style, right? Which is which can also be understood by, let's say, other stakeholders which are not exactly programmers, developers, right? And SpecFlow in this context of our OSS Power-Ups is kind of a special thing, I would say, right? Because we both, and that's funny, because we both on both sides had the feature request to have a writer plugin for SpecFlow.
Since years.
yeah. I have to say it kind of always got in the way with some other things, so we both never ended up. But actually, and that's the really cool part, someone from the community started working on that, and his name is
Petro.
Yeah, and then we kind of joined forces together and invited him also to our Slack channel, and had lots of chats. I mean, in this part, I wasn't exactly involved, but as I know, we had lots of chats around implementation.
It was a quite funny timing that we had there. Only because you have a company behind you doesn't mean that you can do every feature request that the community needs. Like with Rider, a team, but we can't do everything on our own. So also there is an open source sustainability problem there. But finally we wanted to start a writer plugin, and at the same time Bertrand from the community released the first version of it, and we used this opportunity and partnered up, and so we three together, so Bertrand, the SpecFlow team, and with you, with JetBrains, we finally got to it and made a quite good plugin for Rider. Finally. I think I had a request 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to actually look at it. So I would say we share your screen. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah. And I will, as usual, stay in the stream and try to leave all my questions, good or bad.
Good. Before I show you all the plugin, first quick intro. What is SpecFlow? Matthias already mentioned test frameworks. So SpecFlow is a tool for behavior-driven development, and in that case for the test automation part. And that's the wrong slide. So, okay. What is behavior-driven development? It's a development practice where you build a shared understanding of requirements in your team. So with all your stakeholders, shareholders you have, so product owner, developer, tester. Only because it's a DD, something DD. It's not. It has connections to TDD, but it starts way before that, before you start any coding. So in theory you have 3 to 4 phases depending on who you ask. There's first a discovery phase where you try to find concrete examples how the application should behave. In the next phase, the formulation phase, you try to write these examples down in a language called Gerkhin, which has 10 keywords, and the rest is natural language, so you can use English, German, French, whatever you want. In the third phase, that's the automation part. Now you have these scenarios, and I'll show you this later, and you now can automate them and implement them and control your application. And the nice thing on SpecFlow is you're not limited to your eye automation or something. You can choose automation strategy, what you like and what fits for you. And at the end is the verification, where you then combine test results with the scenarios and get nice reporting out of it. SpecFlow itself is primary in this automation phase, and I'll show you then more to it. And one clarification, SpecFlow, when I say SpecFlow, naming is hard. So there's SpecFlow, the tool, and SpecFlow in its all complete. We have a lot of open source stuff. So the core SpecFlow is open source, as the extension for JetBrains Rider and also our Visual Studio extension. They are on our GitHub organization. But we have also some closed source but free products around SpecFlow. One is the SpecFlow Plus Runner, and this other thing is SpecFlow Plus Living Doc. One is a dedicated test runner, and the other thing is a tool for the validation phase. Good, but let's jump to the demo. I'll show you all the stuff. Let's start at the beginning. Let's get rid of PowerPoint. So I have here Rider open. The plugin you get normally from the marketplace, and my team was so nice and published today a new version. So about an hour before the webinar. I did not yet update it. So
that's very brave.
Yeah, they said to me last week, now we don't update it before the webinar. Okay, I will remind them tomorrow. So it's still at the latest, a little bit older version, but everything should work. There are some minor fixes there. And one of the nice things, we heard this a lot from our users and had this problem also in Visual Studio, is how to get started with SpecFlow. And what we did is we created a project template. So you can, with plugins in Rider, you can make a project template that you can configure. So solution name, project name, what you need. Let's keep it all. And then what .NET framework you're supporting. So we're supporting everything what Microsoft is supporting. So starting .NET Framework 4.6.1, .NET Core 2.1 and 3.1, and .NET 5. 3.1 is just default because it's still LTS version. For test frameworks, underlying test frameworks, what we are supporting is more than we have here. So in Rider, you can create for X unit and N unit. SpecFlow also support MS Test. As far as I know, we had problems with it in Rider, so we didn't include it in the project. And also for the SpecFlow Plus Runner, for the specialized test runner I mentioned, this also doesn't currently work in Rider, so we didn't include it here. And we also have an option to include FluentAssertions by default. So because we are fans of this library, so that's why we added it. So when we create this project, so get a solution, a project, and then we have already some folders. And now I'll show you finally what the feature file looks like. So we get one by default. This project creates some calculator example, and this is a feature file, and written in Gerkhin. And there are some keywords I've mentioned. You have a feature file starts with feature, and then the title. Then you can have some additional description, and then you start with your scenarios. And this is simple calculator example. You have to give the first number is 50, second number is 70. When the two numbers are added, then the result should be 120. And when we build this, And
what's the my tag for?
This Gerkhin has also tags. You can tag scenarios or features, and they are mostly used for easy selection when you run CI systems for splitting it up on multiple machines or for quick filtering, I would say. That's
like categories and some other.
Yes, it's like test categories. Tags are translated to test categories from different runners. And there we have the unit tests, not what we have now here. As we used NUnit, we have now the scenario here, and you can run this unit test. So you write it in Gerkhin, but at the end you still have a classical normal NUnit coded test in the background. See here we have some code behind files we're generating the code for NUnit especially. And yeah, we get some warning because we did not implement the step definition. And these are here. With the plugin, you get navigation and different other features. So when I say simply go to definition, that was the wrong 12. We are here then our code behind files. We are in the steps class. And here's the part where you do then the automation. You have this, the sentence, the two numbers are added, and because of this attribute with this regular expression, the runtime, SpecFlow runtime knows then when it's executed and what method it should execute, and does this, execute this code. And that's the part where you then automate your application. So I'll show you later then in a bigger project, bigger example. You can use UI automation with Selenium or with Playwright or some other solution you have. You can use RestSharp to test your REST APIs, or you can directly call your methods. We are completely independent. As long as it's callable from .NET, you can use it in SpecFlow.
One question I have here. By default, you have this scenario context.pending. What is that for? Now you removed it, but
that's what produces this error. One or more step definitions are not implemented. So if I remove all of them, we see that it's green. That's
okay, makes sense.
We generate simply this code that we know at runtime, because we call in with reflection the method. We don't look what's in this method here, what's implemented. As long as there is a method to call, we will call it. And to have such output, we're generating this placeholder code. So now it's green. You see here in the steps error given, and then which method is called. And let's say we throw an exception. So, implemented exception.
Does that also mean that when you're running the test, that all the assertions are executed as opposed to, let's say, in XUnit, if you have a list of assertions, then usually after the first exception you stop.
After the first, we stop also after the first.
Okay.
So that's. I meant if you have it in different steps.
Yes, exactly. If you have different vents, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no. When we look here at the output, we have here again our the exception details are on the top, but here's our output with the different steps given and when, and then we see error. And then we stop executing.
Okay.
Like it's like XUnit NUnit if you don't do anything more.
I would still be interested. Do you think that could be something? I remember MSpec, for instance, allowed to execute all the assertions. Is that something you like intentionally discarded, or?
I wouldn't say intentionally, but personally, when I want one, when a test is failing, is it a unit test or a SpecFlow scenario, I want to see immediately why it's failing. And what I often have, so normally what I saw most of the time in the wild, when one then is failing, then everyone after that is also failing. So because they depend, so if you start with the easy checks, if you have multiples assertions and goes down more in detail and doesn't make for me any sense. So then you have a long list of exceptions and it's unreadable what happens there. And it doesn't change anything. You still have to look into the code or into the test and find the first assert why the first assert is failing.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is what I always do is, or for me, it's from unit tests or for code tests, you know, the 3 A's, arrange, act, assert, and you can translate this similar to given. You have to Gerkhin. You have the given part where you arrange all your stuff. Then you have the when part where you do your actions. And then in the then, as we now discussed, you do all your asserts there to check this. Good, but this is the simple example. Let's go to a bigger one. Ryder.
Also, by the way, it's great to hear that you're friends with another open source Power-Ups project, FluentAssertions.
Yeah, we are quite fans of it. To be honest, I always forget the order of the assert methods in the different unit test frameworks. Is it first expected or actual? I always do it wrong, and their FluentAssertions makes it so much easier. Good. Now a real project. So quick overview what I have here. Let's start it. What this is it should be a web front end for community content submission. So for our community, if they make some content about SpecFlow to submit it to us, we have their community hero program where you can, if you submit something and we choose you, you get some Amazon voucher for your work. And this is a demo. So for this use case, this is an application. It's an ASP.NET Core web front end and backend, and has a SQL Server database in it. The whole thing is running in Docker, and it's compiling, building Docker images now. No idea why. 2 hours ago, it didn't need that. And so it's a little bit bigger application. So you have a UI, we have a database, and how we do all this test automation in such a bigger setup. So,
by the way, you're lucky living in Austria. Would have taken ages for me to download those 300, I don't know, megabyte.
Why that? Wrong. Always finding the right port. So now I have it. So it's nothing too fancy. We have some input boxes, a selector, a console, checkbox, submit and reset button, and this is sending with JavaScript to an API endpoint the data and getting result, and is then shows a message there. So that's to the application. So let's stop this all. That was the wrong button.
And that's also one of the classical ones, right? If you have a web interface like that, then your product owner, for instance, won't. I don't want to go too much ahead, but yeah, right.
Yes, and now example code is all on our example repository. I will merge it later into the main branch, and then you can have a look in detail it. But let's say, so we have here 2 feature files written. One is for the page itself, and one is about submitting. So what we have here is the easy ones, the classical one. So in this case, I'm automating it, testing the application 2 ways. We have here the project community content submission page specs, what is using Selenium for the UI tests. And then the API specs is where I'm only testing the REST endpoint. Let's have a first look at the UI stuff. There always something flashy and to see. So we have some examples for scenarios. So we have this title is set to SpecFlow community content submission. So it's a simple test. It doesn't have a big arrangement. We open the page, and then the title should be that. Quite straightforward. What we also did here is we wrote a scenario which input fields are available. Again, don't have really asserts here. We open the page, and then we check if it's possible to enter something with label. And this is one of the features of Gerkhin. We have here a scenario outline, which means you can have parameters as examples. So you have here an example table, and every entry here is one test. It's like XUnit series. It's NUnit. I forgot how it's called in NUnit.
In NUnit, it's test case, I think.
Test case, okay.
Test case. In XUnit, you use inline data, for instance, or member data to pass those.
Yeah. So what is nice here? So we have here the test explorer. Now we have here the same scenario. Nice name here, and then we have the 5 examples here. And when we run these,
looking good.
So stop a Docker container. So when we run these, we should now then see quickly Chrome popping up there. So the nice thing with Docker at the behind that, it's all the, and this is all the nice things with .NET Core since then. Having a web application simply to start for test automation is now so simple. Except some years ago where you had to publish into IIS and look that the app pool is running. It's so much easier now. So, and you see, yeah, Chrome is popping up and checking with Selenium if everything is running here.
That looks awesome.
And yeah, this whole syntax highlighting here, and you have also IntelliSense here, and autocomplete is all provided by the plugin. Also here that you can run them directly. This example is using XUnit, as far as I remember. Second scenario is where we check the combo box on content, and at the end we have some reset stuff. So what is happening behind that? So let's have a look at the bindings. In our case, we don't use in this case is we don't use Selenium directly. We're using a library called Boa Constrictor from Andrew Knight, and it's for when you use do your automation, there are two patterns: the page object pattern, where you abstract your controls into classes and so, and the second one is a screenplay pattern, what is more command or tasks based. So in that case, I say we attempt to navigate to this URL for this step. And what you also see here is you can have multiple attributes on the method. So the submission page is opened, is available in the given and in the when part of a scenario, and you do this simply with attributes here. And you could also enable it for all three of them. And also, you can enable if you have different spellings or singular plural, you can make this really nice. And these bindings are global, so you have it in one feature file. You can reuse the same in another feature file. So the submission page is opened. We have it in this feature file, and also we will have it. No, I didn't use it here, but I could use it and does the same. So there are no scoping for feature files. You have it once and can reuse it further. And that's also something nice in SpecFlow. I had it before I worked full-time on SpecFlow. I worked on different customer projects. And after some time, you get to you have a rich set on bindings that for new scenarios and for new features, you only have perhaps to implement one additional, and that's to trigger the new feature. Or you didn't even have to something. So like when you have a tester in the team or product or anybody for a new feature, you can use the existing steps and write new scenarios, and that's all, and you don't need to do any additional work.
Well, what's the usual workflow here? I imagine that the product owner, let's say, defines how a new feature should look like, and they would write it in plain English in that case, right? And they generate those bindings, which are at first stopped and will fail or mark as inconclusive, and then it's handed over and you implement that, right?
Yeah, so that was it years ago, the theory. What is quite working well is you start with, you have your refinements, you start with the abstract requirements, and then you have this, you go through your examples. If you have a tester, and my experienced tester has do this all the time. They have think about in concrete examples. Okay, what is happening if I do exactly that, and this is happening? What you do exactly when you're doing this, that is happening, and so you get to your concrete examples. A little bit it comes specification of example is a keyword here, what also comes into place here, and then you try to formulate these scenarios. And the best thing is if you do this if two people are doing this. So from my experience, it was mostly that a tester and a developer sitting together and starting to write the first scenarios. It's that the wording is right, and also so you have to look how is something automatable, and what do you do mention implicit and what is explicit there. The quickest way to get to some scenarios was two people sitting together for some time and get to the first versions, and then most of the time the developer starts to implement it, the bindings, and the tester is adding additional scenarios, additional examples to it to make it complete. And for implementation there, I forgot a slide, but this is the perfect time. With BDD, behavior-driven development, and in TDD, there's always TDD. What is the difference between TDD if you Google for it? And there's not really a difference. It's BDD is an enhancement to TDD. So we have our TDD circle, we write the failing test, make a pass, refactor it, and so on. The circle we all probably know. And BDD is simply adding, when you're implementing your feature, another round to it. You start with a failing feature test. So you write your scenario, and then you could do this. It doesn't. You don't have to, but the way by the books, let's say it that way, is you have this failing scenario. Then you start implementing your feature in a TDD way until all your unit tests are passing and this one scenario is passing. Then you can refactor, and then you go to the next scenario, try to write this, have it read, and start the TDD cycle again there. So there's no difference. BDD is something you can work on top of TDD.
I never actually saw that distinction, although I was using BDD before. Maybe a good point to sneak in one little question. The question is from Nikos. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Does the SpecFlow plugin for Rider also works for mobile development environments as well? For example, Xamarin Forms and multiple platform projects.
First, where's Rider? Yes, because the project that you're creating is a separate project. This is a normal class library where you have your coded tests, unit tests, your normal tests with, and then what you're testing is what you're implementing. So I did some weeks ago testing with an Android application with Appium. It's on the SpecFlow YouTube channel. Did some streams, I think 2 or 3 streams, how to do this. That's the nice thing on SpecFlow. You can use your automation strategy as you want. You're not limited to something. So
could you say
I would say Appium.
Yeah. Could you say as a rule of thumb, everything that works with XUnit and unit, for instance, will also actually work with SpecFlow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because at the end we are generating XUnit and unit code, and everything that's callable. If you have something that's you can use in .NET, you can use in SpecFlow. There's no limitation at all.
I have one more question for the plugin. Initially, you mentioned that you can, or maybe phrase a bit different. If I wanted to write my scenarios in German, for instance, will the plugin
Yes.
also support that I have like we to know it's the wording is a bit different. We would change when to then,
Yeah.
which is a bit different,
So
and
what you
then
can
to
do
done,
is,
etc.
so there are two ways in Gerkhin to do this. One is per feature file, and you should write language A at the beginning, and now you see it complete syntax highlighting is gone because feature is not a keyword, so you code functionally that.
That's beautiful.
German feature file.
Well,
And
what
then
language
I
do you
have
support
all
out of the box?
18 different ones what the Gerkhin part is supporting. So yeah, what is it? English, French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, a long list what's supported by the Gerkhin parser.
That's very nice.
So I think there's also Klingon and Pirate English, so there are also some funny ones there.
Okay, I see. Took a lot of effort.
So
Pirate
that's
English.
one thing to do it per feature file, but you can also configure it in the SpecFlow JSON to have it for all files that you don't have to do this.
Can you also
online
extend
everything.
that? I mean, okay.
No, you can't define custom keywords. These keywords, they are not that many, but these are defined by the Gerkhin parser, and there they're all defined. You can't override them custom for your
Gotcha.
for your project. Yeah, so no problem at all to have their different language here. Good. I was at the automation stuff. Let's try a little bit more complicated. One here, and the content suggestion is here. Filled with. So what is happening here in the automation? Again, we have different wording, the same method. What we get here is a table parameter. So wrong feature file. So we get this table as a parameter. Quite nice, and can convert it to a record. I think, yeah, a record. So we support all the nice C# features, and in that case, we iterate over all the rows, make a case depending on the label, and then saving the value. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Sorry, I'm in the wrong project. That's the wrong automation one I showed you. So we get the table. We create still the type safe list, and then we have here we wrote our own task in boa constrictor, and depending on the label, we then do different things. So we make a send keys, or we select the combo box, or we check the checkbox. So all the automation is hidden, and we can reuse these steps without big problem.
Also, what I like here really much is that you have those values that are actually passed are more gray, and it's not so distracting as it would be as solid black or something.
Yeah, and also to make it more clear what is a parameter and what not. So we have here that parameters here. There's also not only these table parameters, you have also can have parameters in the sentence, like here with the field and also the error messages. In that case, the binding has directly the parameters here, and you have a regex on top of it. And nice thing is we mark this as regex, and so writer and ReSharper recognize that and does the syntax highlighting also for these ones.
So you can put a regex for emails, which everyone gets wrong.
You don't do this. You send it. Simply send an email and try and check if it's if you don't get an error from the server or a confirmation.
But is it that sometimes you actually do specify an actual regex pattern? What would happen, for instance, if it's not fulfilled? Let's say.
You could, if it's not fulfilled, then you get an error that that there is no step found, that there is no binding found for the step. So normally, what I'm 99% is always these regex groups. Sometimes, and I don't have it in this example, is that you say, okay, this is an integer, and then you get directly here an int. So it's I'm not good at regex. It's D plus. I think it's D plus or D star.
Well, you should just make a slash, right, and then you should see it.
Slash. Okay.
The other. I always confuse the two.
Any character.
D is decimal.
Decimal digits.
Yeah.
And so you can say, okay, this is only decimal images, and then you can say, okay, you can say here it's already an int.
But usually, I guess you don't, because you want to test that in your with your. I mean, it's a test, right? It should allow not disallow certain inputs.
Depends what you use with this. If it's an input field where you want to check the validation of the field, then I wouldn't limit it to something. If it's I don't know, really it's a value, and you need this for the arrange part, then please use the correct type here. As early as you are on the correct type, that better it is.
Yeah, or if you would test the method, for instance, and you can only pass integer, let's say, then you would certainly limit it to just integers, right? Because then otherwise the int parse or so would fail.
Yes. Good. Yeah, that's the Selenium automation. Let's quickly have a look at the second, at the API automation. Feature file looks similar, but are automated in a different way. So when we say here's when form is submitted, in the background I have the state, what we said in the step before. So in this step, I'm saving all these values that I can then submit it in the next step. And I'm using plain RestSharp, make a JSON request with the endpoint, make a post and get the response back. And in the following scenarios, we do then the asserts. And here's that what we talked about before, Matthias. So you have here then the when and multiple tens, so the 10. and the end. So this then is first checking if it's something is saved in the database. In that case, not, because it's the error case. So nothing is in the database, and then we check the error message. And if we would have something in the error in the database, this would fail, and we would stop the execution here. So we will never check the error message as long as this is not fulfilled. And yeah, so it's the same. I think these are nearly the same scenarios. What I'm showing you with this multiple project, it is possible to do this. So it's not perhaps the best practice to have a copy of scenarios with different automation behind it. But it's an example project, and there are other ways to solve this, but this would make the code so much more complex that it's not anymore a simple example. So yeah, these scenarios are, the first scenario is the same and only simply different automated. What you need and what is feasible for you. There's always the choice for you. And one thing I forgot to show before is what SpecFlow also has are hooks. Test automation, normally, or in SpecFlow, normally only this arrange isn't enough, or you would also, you would never or should never, depends. You don't write normally a scenario given the web server is running, which starts your web server in the background, because you need this for 99% of your scenarios. You do this in a hook, and what there are various hooks. So it's lifecycle events. So we have here before test run hook. What is starting our Docker containers in the background with Docker Compose, and in the after test run we are shutting them again down. What you have here is you have an after scenario hook. So this is after every scenario where we try to close the browser. Or here is a hook that we do before and also after scenario where we reset the database. So we connect to the database and kill everything what's in there to have for the next scenario a clean slate. And you can do this quite easily in these hooks, and you don't mention you don't write this in your Gerkhin files, because this is bloat there is distracting, and you want to focus in your feature files on the feature what you're testing, and not having 10 lines about starting your application and that everything is running. You do this all in your automation part, and it's
following dry principle again, right? Don't repeat yourself. It's yes. Again looking at XUnit, NUnit. I don't actually know how it's called in XUnit. In XUnit, I think you use the constructor and disposable pattern for that. Yeah, before and after test. I don't know what you do before scenario and after scenario, but in NUnit, for those who are using NUnit, it's called setup fixture, I think, and setup, right?
They changed the attributes. Yeah, the nice thing about SpecFlow is we are integrating in all these, so we are using the same stuff they use. So if you're interested, you can have a look in the code behind files, as we are here with XUnit. We have a class fixture for the feature before feature and after feature hooks and everything. So we use all the hooks that's available from the different unit test runner to hook into them and execute the stuff at the right moment. And it's also why it should be fixed in the next version. But if you're currently using XUnit in Rider and RestSharp, there is some bogus errors here. We fixed it with the next version because there's some code that's for one of the hooks needed. This red squiggly lines should be gone with the next update.
But by the way, is there any specific reason when I would use NUnit or XUnit, or is that completely interchangeable, basically?
What that's from our side, we don't prefer. We support all three or all four of them with our own runner. We try to use as much possible the native features that are available from the different runners. So we just added some weeks ago a dedicated output API to write output to your test log. You have in NUnit, MS Test, and XUnit different APIs to do that. So in XUnit, the iTest output helper, and in MS Test and NUnit is the test context class with different stuff.
But it's not like you're missing out on a certain feature or something if you prefer NUnit over XUnit, let's say. Okay.
No. So for some parts, like the SpecFlow output helper, what we did now is it has two methods, writeLine and attachment, and in the background we are sending this to the right APIs for different test runners where it's supported. So writeLine sending a message works for all of them, but let's say add attachment. This is only supported in NUnit and MS Test, and in XUnit doesn't. In XUnit we fall back to some behavior. But
what exactly happens if you add an attachment? How will that look like, or where will it surface?
Depending on how you run it, and I have to check with the team, or it's with the NUnit support. So I have it not here. In Visual Studio, has a separate section with all the files for when you have NUnit, where you can click on it. And also, if you run it in a build pipeline, you have it there. So when you say with NUnit and add attachment, you have it then in TeamCity in the metadata of the test. You have it there and see them directly then there. And this is simply because, we're using NUnit. NUnit is integrated in TeamCity, and everything plays together and works nicely together. And that's where we're really trying to not invent something complete new. We try to integrate as much as possible in the existing .NET ecosystem, that everything is possible. And you don't need then a special tool for the next step, because tests is only one part in your CI/CD pipeline, and you have tools before that and tools after that, and we don't want to invent our own standards.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, I think you call it, right? But it's I totally agree. I mean, integrating with existing tooling is very important, I think, because it also lowers the bar for someone to introduce that tool, right? And for the attachments, I'm not exactly sure if you mention it. I remember we used it. I mean, for me, it's quite some time ago, but we used it for taking screenshots, right? If an exception occurs, let's say, then you can actually make a screenshot of the browser in that particular example, attach it, and you can actually inspect that and see what has happened at that particular moment.
Yes, that's one of the ideas behind that. I try to quickly find this. No. Give me a moment. So that's where this feature comes from, because it was requested by our users. And is this the correct?
And by the way, for everyone waiting for their answers to be asked, I will ask right afterwards.
So what you see is here is it's now SpecFlow plus Living Doc, the tool what generates living documentation, and that's one of the use cases where we needed this output with the attachments. So you have here with this test output, you get it now visible here. So you have your normal scenarios as we know it, or similar to that what we had, and you can click then on it and see the screenshots.
Andreas, I already said it, and I actually was waiting for us to take a look at the living documentation, but this is absolutely beautiful. I have to say, I was working on a similar thing. Well, not comparable at all, yeah. But this is exactly how I always wanted it. So this looks
I
perfect.
will let the team know.
I have one question for that report. Have you ever tried to? Well, I'm a TeamCity user mostly, as I heard you too. Have you ever tried to integrate that as a custom report so that you have a test?
Yes.
Does that work?
Yes, I did. I did it in our last two product webinars. I showed it with TeamCity, and we used the third-party report tab and
including navigation to the attachment, etc.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's wonderful.
Yes. So I need to start my TeamCity instance, but then I can show you if we still have time.
We have like, I would say something between 15 to 25 minutes. Otherwise, my background team will let me know.
So I start TeamCity background.
Okay, can I ask a couple of questions in the meantime?
Sure.
Does that fit?
Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah. There was one question. Oh, let me see. I have to scroll through it. Does SpecFlow still need to generate files directly in the project? Alternatives could be in OBJ directory or using source generators.
Yes, as you saw it, we still generate the feature files directly in where the feature is. The reason, so that's the status. To the OBJ and source generators, there is a pull request open to move this in the OBJ folder. The problem is this breaks a lot of navigation from Test Explorer to feature files. There's with XUnit always some problems, but this will break it for everyone, so you don't have any navigation from the Test Explorer, is it Rider or Visual Studio, to the feature file, and we did not find any solution for that yet. And we think we can't do this, so that's why as long as this doesn't work, we can't move these feature files to the OBJ folder. And for source generators, I'm not sure about the latest changes here, but when they were released, they were only available for C# 9 and .NET Core or .NET 5. And we are supporting .NET Framework and also VB.NET. And we have a working solution to generate the code, so
don't touch it.
It makes no sense for us to change to something only because it's new, it's shiny. We have a working solution that supports more than the new solution. But I think there are some hacks to get it to work on full framework source generators, but no, code generation is messed.
Maybe I missed it, but what exactly is the part of the generated code that would be nice to hide? Because as I now remember, you actually do manipulate that feature.cs file, right?
No.
So what is the part? No?
Manually, you don't change anything here. when you compile from the feature file, this feature.cs is created, and it's like the code behind file. Not exactly, but we had it in WinForms also, these code behind files, and also in WPF, where you could change it. But yeah, not really.
Where were the steps defined then? Then that's just
They're in
what I missed.
separate classes. They're in
Okay.
separate
Okay,
classes.
now it makes sense. Yeah.
They're
Sorry.
in separate classes that needs a binding attribute, and then you have the.
Yeah, I was just sleeping for a moment or something.
These are poorly code generated to generate the stuff, so for the different test runners that they can find it.
Next question, where can I find the demo code you're showing?
On our GitHub example repo, if I find my browser, here on the SpecFlow OSS organization, SpecFlow examples, there is a folder webinars. For all the webinars I have here for everyone, the code. There is already some version here, but it's not the version I showed you. I have to merge the branch to the main to the master main branch, and I still need to rename this. And then you see the code what I showed you today. I will do this quite afterwards when we are done.
Okay.
Here. So if you see the recording, it's already there.
And all of you see Andreas' Twitter handle right next to his name. One comment, I think it's worth actually mentioning that. Ruslan says, I have successful experience using SpecFlow to test a game made with Unity. The goal for SpecFlow test was to set the test game balance and AI behavior for 100 of heroes with different skills combination. That's like a perfect success story, I have to say.
Please get in touch with me. I would like to know more about it.
Sounds good.
Sounds cool.
Another question, I think. Let me quickly read it. Joseph, what is your experience with non-technical stakeholders getting hands on the scenarios? Do they appreciate it? You mentioned the scenarios are maintained by testers and devs.
Normally, yes. Always depends on the person. Working with concrete examples makes discussions about how something should behave so much easier. And if you start with this new, it's a new tool. There's probably some hesitation, but if you show them the benefits from it, I think you can quickly convince them to it, and yeah, they see it. I think they have the concrete examples. It's Gerkhin. The idea is that everybody can understand it. So you don't need a technical background to see what is happening in the scenario. The idea is not only the product owner, but you can give it to the customer and say, is this correct? So should the application behave in that way? And they should be able to say yes and no. Depends a lot of how you write your scenarios, that you're using the correct words, so the words from the customers, that they can find them again. But at the end, they're often quite fond of the scenarios. And I saw a project that used it for test workshops. I saw projects where this was then there weren't no big test reports needed, and for the approval and the Endabnahme at the end of the project
review
check. They saw that there are the scenarios, and they saw, okay, that's working. And together with living documentation, they saw, okay, they are green. This is working like that.
I want to try out that right afterwards, I think. and I think also, I mean, I being honest, I have no experience with using SpecFlow, but judging from my previous company, we often had very detailed sprint plannings, and I think having this framework of, well, it's almost like you're defining a certain set of a certain DSL for testing your features, right? That would certainly, I think that would have certainly helped almost writing everything inside the planning meeting. So it's almost at the point that you could commit it, basically. At least that's how I picture it. Another question, I think, or is it an answer? You can use step definition attribute instead of having 2 lines with given when attributes. I think it was more of a statement, I think.
Yeah, so you can do something like what was the attribute called? Step argument transformation?
Step definition attribute.
Yeah, you can use, there is one step definition which means all of the 3. That was what
okay, then you don't have to repeat given, when, then, etc.
Yes.
Right? Okay,
yes.
Gotcha. But then it's actually all the 3.
And it's all 3, yes.
Okay, good. Also, another comment, I think, just in our organization, we have trained the business and QA people to participate in the scenario creation. This is helpful for making the scenarios more business orientated. Another success story. Do you already have a testimonial website or something?
We just did launch last week or 2 weeks before our new website. To be honest, I'm not sure. I moved so much content. I don't remember everything.
As I get this from today, I think you definitely have enough material to put there. Definitely. We don't have any more questions, but I will just mention it. If you have any questions, this is the time to leave some more. One thing I would like to take. We haven't looked at the TeamCity, right?
Yeah, the TeamCity is
then let's look at TeamCity.
Not there. So normal TeamCity build. We have the tests here. And we did this. This is the output API. So we have here the test metadata with the images. And thanks to this report UI, we have now this for living doc for the UI specs here. And all the stuff with the output also. And scroll, and then we show this here. We have here the screenshots, open it, and when you look at the URL, this is also served by TeamCity.
Okay, I have one question for that. I noticed that the names of the steps there, I mean, here it's obvious, but in the other view where it's just attached to the test, these seem like random names for the PNGs or
yeah, I'm using just get temp file name.
So they're not ordered or something, no?
Not for this example. So NUnit normally orders it in the order when what you call it. So also 0, L, A. So they are ordered here in the order of calling the methods.
Okay, looks good.
But this is TeamCity. In the examples, I have only temp file names random generated.
From the look of it, I think it just orders by file name. Maybe I don't know.
That's only a small example. You can do better things than only get temporary file name or something from the framework what I used. They are better. options.
This report looks so beautiful. Well, one more time, I would like to go back to Rider for a moment, and I would like maybe in a feature file, and I would really like to point out again also our huge thanks, I think, from both of our companies to Bertrand for implementing that or getting this plugin going. I think let's try this completion of a step again, because I just want to point out how this is behind the scenes. What happens basically is that there's a full new language implementation, which was provided to actually understand this Gerkhin file. Excuse me. And also including the navigation, and also that it's shown as a test that you can click. I do wonder. Let's make a little test of if everything is working. Remove that line. Yeah, and now hit Alt Enter and say run test. Just type it. Run. Not all tests. Try just run, maybe. And the last one? No, the last one is not the test, I think. Okay.
No, it's...
What I expected was that just the test is executed, but yeah, it might be a tiny thing. Usually you have shortcuts for that, and then that you from the current caret position that it will execute the test.
Could be that this is in the new version. So as
could be okay.
Start.
Sounds
in
good.
this 1.7.0 version, we got a lot of feedback from JetBrains for things like that, and these are, as far as I know, most of them are in this version. So it could be that this in this.
But for now, you have completion. You have the go-to declaration. You have, I think, what you didn't show was the was formatting. So yes. If you have, that I think we didn't show. Also for the table, if you, yeah. So the usual shortcut when you say clean up code, then it will just instantly look much better, much more structured, and yes. I mean that's a really great job. Yeah. And it took a while. When were they starting?
We started so Bertrand released it in January.
The first version?
The first version. It was already there was some 2 or 3 years old plugin that he got and finished to run. And yeah, end of January, I think he released the version, and then I think 2-3 weeks later we started working together on it on full speed.
Okay, sounds good. We don't have any more questions. Anything you would like to leave?
Only one thing when I find my slides. All thank you for listening, and yeah, if you have questions, contact me on Twitter, per email, go to our website, and also on GitHub. Yeah,
you stole my thank you. You stole my thank you note. I actually have one more. Let me also bring my screen, share screen. Let me see, where is it actually? I think it's here. Yes. And add this. So couple of more information. Andreas also shared some, like his email, if you want to get in touch. He's also Sabotage on Twitter. You know, every time I see your Twitter handle, I think of the, what was it, Beastie Boys, Sabotage. And at this point, also big thanks to the .NET Foundation for us for having us as a co-streamer there. And yeah, follow .NET Foundation, follow us. If you like this format, then give it a like and subscribe, whatever channel you're watching. Andreas, big thanks to you. Big thanks to Bertrand, who was working behind the scenes so that we actually can have this webinar. And thanks for joining, everyone. Like I said, like, subscribe if you like this format. Let us know. And yeah, I think we will next time. I think, I'm not exactly sure, have 3 people in pipeline for our next episode. But I won't reveal any secrets, I think. So just stay tuned, follow us, and see where it goes. And yeah, like I said, thanks for joining, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.